At the beginning of Dark Souls 3, once you get to Firelink Shrine, the game's central hub, you can take some stairs up to a locked tower. From that tower, you can access a rooftop area where you can find a few items that are very useful in the early game, an additional healing charge, and a ring that increases the amount of souls you gain from all sources. To unlock the door to the tower, you must purchase the key from the handmaiden in the shrine for 20,000 souls, which at that point in the game, you don't have. But you see, next to the locked tower door, there's this nice little tree, and it just happens to be right next to the rooftops. If you yourself have played Dark Souls 3, it's possible you know that with a bit of effort, you can use the tree's sloped surface to get up onto the rooftop and to the mentioned items a bit earlier than intended. Now, my question to you is, did I just play the game wrong by skipping the key to get an advantage in the early game? Or is this way of doing things as valid as any other way of playing? What about the fact that I'm using ranged pyromancy instead of facing enemies in pure melee combat? Is there even one right way to play the game, or perhaps several? Before you go on to expect me to give some milquetoast argument that all ways to engage with the contents of a game are equally valid, let me stop you, for I intend to very firmly disappoint that expectation. And trust me, I'm good at that. In short, my position, for which I'll argue shortly, is that there are right and wrong ways to play a game. Plus, and this probably sounds oddly trivial, there are also ways not to play a game at all when engaging with one. Let me start out by saying that I take playing games to be a goal-directed activity. The most obvious goal a player could aim at is winning, whatever that looks like. Being the first to cross the finish line, achieving the highest score, beating the final boss, or whatever this is. It stands to reason that there are better and worse means to reach that goal, and ways to miss it entirely. Analogously, if I try to drive a nail into a wall, using a hammer would probably be a good start. Regardless, if I just end up hitting my thumb instead of the nail, or I give the nail a certain bend, you'd rightfully say that I'm doing it wrong, that I have not in fact nailed it. So is playing the game wrong choosing suboptimal or detrimental means to reach the goal of winning? Claiming so would be a bit premature, for you might be inclined to bring up another goal the player has, or rather, a purpose that playing a game serves. It's supposed to be fun, and so you could claim that that is what ultimately matters, that if you're having fun, you're playing the game right. I see two issues with this proposal. Firstly, people can play games for other reasons than fun. Think of professionals that play games for money, or reviewers or playtesters that play to write reviews and bug reports. Or people seeking to prove they can beat a difficult game, no matter if it's fun to them or not. We wouldn't say that those people are playing the game wrong if they're not actually having fun while playing. That's just not what they are playing the game for. There's no reason to disqualify them, since after all, their in-game actions might be virtually identical to someone playing for fun. The second issue is that, just as the person single-mindedly aiming to win is leaving out the motivation for why you play, the person strictly aiming at fun is disregarding the goal-directed nature of playing games. Sure, you could spend all your time in the character creator and then uninstall the game, if that's the entertaining part to you. People do that, but it would be misleading to say that those people played the game, no? Or what about people that just screw around, with no interest in what the game wants from them, just hitting buttons or performing nonsensical in-game actions? Or worse yet, people who just want to maximize the misery they inflict on other players by griefing, trolling, or throwing the match. They do not accept the goal of the game either. They might be having fun, but cannot be said to be having fun playing the game, because they're not actually playing that game. Likewise, if you watch a playthrough of a game online, you might be having fun, but you're not having fun playing the game. You're engaging with the game in some other way that can still be fun. That's valid, but it's separate from what we asked about. Is there a right or wrong way to play a game? Let's take stock. It seems there are two goals that we can aim at in playing games. Firstly, winning, and secondly, playing or participating in the game for whatever reason. For fun, as a professional, to have a transformative experience, etc. However, we're forced to say more than that. That's because there appears to be ways of playing games wrong while aiming at winning and while genuinely playing the game. Or are there? I ascribe the following proposal to the Git Gud mindset. Supposedly, there are some valid ways to achieve victory and some invalid ones. For example, easy modes like summoning cooperators, cheeses like whittling down a large enemy from a safe distance, or overpowered strategies and tools like using overtuned weapons or trivializing the fight through repeated stun locks. Because Git Gud is a demand to increase one's skill as a player, not the power of one's player character, these means are viewed with not just suspicion, but outright contempt. At the same time, this demand seems a bit schizophrenic, if you'll allow the expression, since increasing your skill as a player typically also means increasing the grip you have on the game mechanics and on the available tools and strategies, along with a palpable notion of game sense which you gradually attain. So while you are encouraged to steal your mechanical skill, you'll be admonished for putting your increased knowledge about the game to good use. Rather, the only valid way to deploy that knowledge is to discern what tools and strategies you should refrain from using, lest it diminish the grandiosity of the feat brought about by sheer mechanical skill. While it is telling that proponents of Git Gud prefer using their fists over using their head, harboring this mentality might not be entirely their fault. Souls-likes advertise an underdog story where the meek upstart is put up against a bleak and unkind world filled with grotesque monsters and fearsome tyrants, and I'm not speaking of how some people perceive Reddit. It would be odd if that upstart actually was laughably overpowered and therefore no upstart at all. If that was the case, would we have the courage to call it out as bad game design? Or would we practice patience by sitting with this ludonarrative dissonance again and again with each new game? It is tempting to stay in that fantasy of being the underdog. However, a lie will remain a lie. The only way to proceed, I believe, is to break from this illusion and to take the Git Gud people as talking exclusively about a player-made optional challenge mode. It is doubtful that they will agree that that's what they're doing, for that is their curse. Regardless, as long as you're playing the game, and as long as you're aiming to win using the tools you are given, you aren't playing the game wrong in either sense discussed above. And whether you're using melee or magic or miracles, they're all valid and effective ways to win. You're merely choosing not to engage in the optional Git Gud brand challenge mode, where the valid means are further restricted. Like going from pool to one pocket pool, in which, as the name implies, there's only one valid pocket for each player to score points in. Yet champions of that challenge mode are not wrong for enjoying it, or advocating for it from a place of genuine certainty that it is the best way to play. It's just that they must be aware that that's what they're doing, advocating for the best, not the only valid way to play. Take a look at games like Minecraft to find a surprisingly similar idea. Minecraft does contain goals. You can beat or win at Minecraft by getting all achievements, beating the Ender Dragon, etc., but barely anyone does so or plays Minecraft to beat it. Most people seem to have come to the conclusion that most fun lies with building, exploring, surviving, ideally together with some friends. That is a bit different from the person I sketched out earlier who is just aimlessly screwing around. People like that lack any sort of goal. They can be said to play like a toddler plays with a toy, but they cannot be said to play a game for that exact reason. Those Minecraft players, though, do set goals for themselves. Their own goals, allowed for, but not provided by the game itself. This might sound odd, but I think it's fair to say that in some sense, namely in the sense that aims at winning, those people are playing Minecraft wrong. And that's okay. They're playing their own games within the game, with custom goals and perhaps custom restrictions on what they're allowed to do, what the rules of their new game are. I believe that's an amazing part of games too, the fact that you can make almost anything into a game. I can walk down to the store, or I can make a game out of it by placing restrictions or modifying the goal. I cannot step on certain tiles on the road, I have to take a specific path and cannot stray from it or take shortcuts, I have to reach the store within a certain time limit, or I need to be faster than someone else, and so on and so on. Me making a game out of going to the store, or the Minecraft player making a unique game out of building impressive structures within the game world, or the Git Gud champion challenging themselves in Souls games, there's no fundamental difference between all of those. There are incidental differences, like the challenge run will exclude a bunch of people who are not that adept at games, but so will my going to the store exclude people with disabilities or ones who don't have a store within walking distance. But that only becomes a problem once I proclaim my way of playing going to the store is the only valid one. What about my example from Dark Souls 3? I'll testify to you that I played, at least in part, for fun, and did have fun jumping the tree. So I played the game right in that regard. I was aiming at winning in the sense of successfully completing the game. That's why I wanted the items, so that box is checked. But did I use the tools provided by the game to advance, or did I break a rule with what I did? It's tricky because there's no rulebook with explicitly stated restrictions provided by FromSoft. It seems like an unintentional strategy. At the same time, it is one of the most well-known exploits for Dark Souls 3. Nevertheless, it hasn't been fixed. Then again, this 10-year-old game still has a bunch of bugs and glitches, so who knows if leaving the tree jump in was intentional. I think I'd personally veer on the side of calling this an instance of playing the game wrong, at least as I understand the rules implicitly laid out by the game. But my interpretation of them isn't ultimately decisive. You'll have the same discussion with speedrun categories. What's actually allowed in a glitchless run? What precisely counts as out of bounds? These become community decisions, having to come to practical conclusions in the face of indeterminacy. Discovering existing or outlining new rules and goals, or iterating on what's come before in that regard, that's what games are all about. So when you ask the question, am I playing the game right? You can ask, 1. Am I aiming to win? 2. Am I satisfying my reason to play? And 3. Am I using the tools provided and allowed by the game? If one or more answers to those questions are no, ask yourself what game you are playing. Maybe the answers are no when asking about Minecraft, but not when asking about Minecraft. Or they are no when asking about Dark Souls 3, melee only, no consumables, deathless, glitchless, any percent, but not when just asking about Dark Souls 3. The choice of what game you want to play, of course, lies with each individual person. That's part of the fun of it, in my opinion, and part of the light-hearted nature of games and the activity of playing them. After all, playing games is the voluntary attempt to overcome unnecessary obstacles. Someone ought to make a video elaborating on that.